If nightmares had a shape, they would probably look like these roads. Around the world, there are transportation routes so dangerous that just looking at them is enough to make many people uneasy. Some roads twist and fold back on themselves through sharp turns carved into mountain slopes. Some are slowly swallowed by the sea with every incoming tide. Others are the kind of roads where snow, rock slides, or mud can appear right in front of your vehicle without warning. Yet these roads are not located inside restricted zones. They have not been abandoned. Thousands of people still travel them every day. So what earned some of them names like the Road of Death or the Highway to Hell? Hold on tight, because we're about to begin a journey through the roads that have become some of the most terrifying transportation nightmares on Earth. You're looking at a road that can barely manage a straight stretch. In northern Italy, Stelvio Pass climbs into the Alps through 48 consecutive hairpin turns on its northern side. Every turn is marked by a numbered stone post placed along the edge of the road. From above, the entire pass looks like a rope that has been bent over and over again between rock faces and deep drop-offs. What makes Stelvio Pass a nightmare isn't really its elevation of more than 2,700 meters. It's the way the road constantly forces you to steer. You barely make it through one tight corner before the next one rises directly ahead, then another and another. On one side, a rock wall presses close to the roadway. On the other, there's only a low concrete barrier and a drop of hundreds of meters into the valley below. At Stelvio Pass, being half a second too slow or drifting slightly offline can be enough for things to get out of control. Some places are so isolated that people have to carve a road through a mountain just to escape. Guoliang Tunnel in China is one of those places. Years ago, 13 villagers used hammers and chisels to cut this road through the Taihang Mountains, creating the only route connecting Guoliang village to the outside world. Today, the tunnel sits deep inside the mountain and is only about 4 meters wide. One side is a rough rock wall pressed close to passing vehicles. The other opens directly onto a steep drop through more than 30 stone windows suspended along the tunnel. Locals call them the Windows of Death. And of course, the road is anything but smooth. It's rough, slippery, packed with blind corners squeezed against the rock face. One small mistake can come at a very high cost. Yet that same danger has turned Guoliang Tunnel into a strange attraction. Visitors still come from all over to see a road that seems to have been carved straight through the side of a massive mountain. "10 kilometers. How long would it take you to drive that distance?" Normally, just a few minutes. But at Sani Pass, many drivers spend nearly 4 hours struggling to reach the top. The pass climbs directly into the Drakensberg Mountains on a rough gravel road at nearly 2,900 meters above sea level. No pavement, very little room for error. Just loose rock, slick mud, and tight bends wrapped around the edge of the mountain. In some of the steepest sections, the grade reaches 1 to 3 or even 1 to 4. That means for every 3 to 4 meters traveled forward, the road gains 1 meter in elevation. The higher you climb, the more fog and loose gravel cover the route, slowly swallowing the view ahead. Lose traction or slip for just a few seconds, and the vehicle can start sliding toward the edge. That's why unsuitable vehicles are often turned back right at the South African side of the pass. Twice a day, this road disappears completely beneath the sea. And if you're only a few minutes behind the tide, your vehicle can end up trapped as water rises from both sides. Passage du Gois in France is about 4.1 kilometers long and connects the mainland to Noirmoutier Island. When the tide goes out, a stone roadway emerges from the sea, like a temporary path, returned by the ocean. But a few hours later, the water comes rushing back, faster than many people expect. There are no gates, no barriers, not much time to hesitate. Only warning markers along the route and tide schedules that determine when you're allowed to cross. What makes Passage du Gois frightening isn't speed or steep cliffs. It's the feeling that the road itself can disappear beneath your tires. Once the sea starts swallowing the roadway, the difference between still safe and stranded in the middle of the ocean can be measured in minutes. Traffic on Karnali Highway rarely moves fast. Not because of speed limits, but because many sections leave almost no room for even the smallest mistake. Located in the remote mountains of western Nepal, Karnali Highway stretches more than 250 kilometers along the slopes of the Himalayas as a strip of dusty rock constantly cracked and broken beneath passing vehicles. Most of the road surface is still dirt, rock, and mud. It winds through steep mountain walls and deep valleys far below. After rain, the road turns soft. Mud pulls tires off course. And when a vehicle gets stuck or breaks down in the middle of the route, other drivers sometimes have to use chains to pull it through the mud or past landslide-prone sections. Yet despite all of that, thousands of people still rely on Karnali Highway every day. For many isolated communities in western Nepal, it remains the last connection to the rest of the world. With a name like $1 Million Highway, you might think this is the kind of road made for a relaxing road trip. That is, until it starts pulling you above 3,350 meters through Colorado's San Juan Mountains. There are almost no guardrails here, not because someone forgot to build them, but because winters are so harsh. If barriers were installed, snow would pile up on the roadway instead of being pushed over the edge by snowplows. Then the hairpin turns begin to appear, sharper, narrower, more frequent. That's why $1 Million Highway regularly shows up on lists of America's most intimidating roads. Not because of its length, but because it feels like there's almost nothing separating your tires from the drop beyond the edge. In many parts of the world, when a road falls apart, people repair it. But in the rainforests of Gabon, it often feels like nature is constantly trying to swallow every road that appears. Most of these forest roads are little more than red dirt and mud cutting through the dense tropical rainforest of Central Africa. No highways, no streetlights, just narrow tracks stretching for hundreds of kilometers through an endless sea of trees. Passing trucks can kick up huge clouds of dust that block the entire road ahead within seconds. In many forest areas, drivers are practically driving blind behind a wall of red dust. The rainy season makes everything much worse. Water floods across the road. Long stretches of slippery mud make vehicles lose control even at low speeds. That's why roads through the Gabon rainforest rarely stay stable long enough for anyone to feel truly safe on them. Long lines of trucks and tourist vehicles often crawl for hours to get across Guoliang Pass. One of the most chaotic and difficult mountain roads in the Indian Himalayas. Sitting at nearly 4,000 meters above sea level, this route connects the Kulu Valley with Lahaul Spiti along a road constantly torn apart by melting snow, heavy rain, and landslides. During peak season, thousands of vehicles pack onto narrow sections covered in mud and loose rock. The road is already rough enough, but it becomes even more dangerous when the waters of Rani Nala come rushing across it. Then, the fog rolls in. Visibility starts to disappear. In some places, you can barely see more than a few meters of road ahead. The name Guoliang itself is said to mean pile of corpses in the local language. A name that shows just how dangerous this place was long before tourist convoys ever arrived. On a calm day, the Atlantic Ocean Road looks like a ribbon winding across the North Atlantic. But when powerful storms arrive, it can turn into a deadly roadway. The road is only about 8.3 kilometers long, yet it crosses 8 small bridges connecting tiny islands scattered across the cold sea. And when the weather shifts, everything changes fast. Waves crash directly onto the roadway. Strong winds shove vehicles sideways. Salt water covers the windshield within seconds. On some days, towering white waves rise higher than the bridge railings, making the entire route almost disappear behind rain, sea spray, and freezing foam. And when you're driving through conditions like that, It feels as if all it would take is a little more anger from the ocean for the entire road to be swallowed whole. If you hate traffic, the Trans-Labrador Highway in Canada might sound like paradise. But if isolation makes you uneasy, this place feels more like a nightmare stretching for over 1,100 kilometers through the Labrador wilderness. There are sections where you can drive for hundreds of kilometers without seeing another person. Cell service disappears completely. The next gas station may be far ahead. All that's left around you are boreal forests, frozen lakes, and cold open land stretching all the way to the horizon. In winter, snow begins to cover everything. The road turns into a white tunnel. Blizzards can erase visibility entirely. Temperatures drop below -40 degrees Celsius. And if your vehicle breaks down out there without proper survival gear, Labrador's cold can become dangerous much faster than most people expect. On your right, loose rock waiting to fall. On your left, a sheer drop. Ahead, a wall of fog. Beneath your tires, a mountain road packed with sharp turns that challenge even experienced drivers. Those are some of the reasons why the D915 road to Bayburt, Turkey, earned the nickname Highway to Hell. The road crawls up the slopes of the Soanla Mountains through dozens of hairpin turns wrapped tightly around the cliffs. The famous Derabasha section alone contains 13 consecutive switchbacks in just over 5 kilometers. What makes many drivers nervous is the fact that there are almost no guardrails separating their tires from the hundreds of meters drop below. Each hairpin turn has turning points that are only 20 to 30 meters apart, which is breathtakingly short. The first 6 turns, with angles up to 70 degrees, will make your hair stand on end. Your fear instinct kicks in, and it feels like the whole world is spinning. With the car suspended between the cold cliff walls. To get through it, you need precise throttle control. Steering that is accurate to the centimeter and absolute focus. The reward for your courage will be the spectacular view from the top. "121 kilometers without a single turn." That's the most famous straight stretch on Eyre Highway, the road that crosses the dry deserts of southern Australia. At first glance, it doesn't look dangerous. The road is wide, the grades are gentle, there are no cliffs or towering mountains. But for many long-haul drivers, it's the endless monotony that makes Eyre Highway unsettling. The scenery barely changes, just a black strip of pavement running straight toward the horizon through red earth, dry scrub, and intense heat. For truck drivers, staying focused on a road with almost no stops and little change in terrain becomes a real challenge. During the day, the pavement radiates heat under the desert sun. On both sides are low shrubs, red dirt, and vast open space stretching endlessly into the distance. Kangaroos can suddenly dart onto the road at high speed. Meanwhile, the distance between rest stops and gas stations can reach hundreds of kilometers in some areas. That's why Eyre Highway is often described as one of Australia's most isolated roads. It's too quiet, too long, too empty, to the point where you start losing track of how long you've been behind the wheel. Looking through the windshield on the Sichuan-Tibet Highway, layer upon layer of curves unfold across the mountainsides, as if someone had scribbled a long line of ink across the rugged terrain of Western China. This route, connecting Sichuan and Tibet, must cross a series of high mountain passes before reaching the Tibetan Plateau. Because the landscape is so steep and deeply divided by mountains and valleys, the road constantly changes direction in search of a way through. Many hairpin turns sit close together at elevations above 4,000 meters. Large trucks often have to swing wide and slow dramatically just to make it around the corners. From above, vehicles look so small they seem to be crawling along the edge of the mountains. The drive is rarely smooth or predictable. At times, vehicles slow to a crawl just to navigate blind turns. Even in good weather, the Sichuan-Tibet Highway feels as though the road is constantly negotiating with the mountains, searching for the next way forward. In many sections, Patiopoulo-Perdikaki Road is barely wider than a single lane as it winds through the mountains of western Greece, along narrow ledges hanging high above deep valleys. The road itself isn't especially long, but the terrain keeps drivers on edge the entire way. Sharp turns follow one another along rocky mountain slopes. In some places, drivers have to slow to a crawl just to keep all four tires on the narrow gravel-covered roadway. a rough mountainside presses against one side of the vehicle. On the other, there's little more than open space dropping into the valley below. And around many corners, you don't actually see the next stretch of road until your vehicle is already turning into it. From a distance, the entire route looks like a thin cut etched into the mountainside. Small, exposed, and just enough to make every steering input feel more important than usual. You begin the drive through Zojila and quickly realize this road doesn't open up the way most mountain highways do. Located more than 3,500 meters above sea level between Kashmir and Ladakh, the pass is squeezed tightly against the Himalayas. Many sections are barely wide enough for a single lane, covered with loose rock and packed dirt constantly churned up by heavy vehicles. When two vehicles meet, passing isn't quick. It happens inch by inch. Drivers carefully work through narrow gaps on a road that already feels unstable. One small steering mistake can bring a tire right to the edge of the slope. During winter, some of the higher sections are lined by towering walls of snow that rise above the height of the vehicles. They form a narrow white corridor where both visibility and space shrink down to little more than the road directly ahead. That's why Zojila is more than just a busy mountain pass. It's a series of roads squeezed tight by the terrain, where every trip depends on carefully judging the distance between your vehicle, the rock face, and the empty space beyond the mountainside. Many rental car companies in New Zealand include a very unusual clause in their contracts. If you drive on Skipper's Canyon Road, your insurance may no longer be valid. That alone says a lot about the reputation of this road. Carved directly into the mountainside in the late 19th century, Skipper's Canyon Road winds along the Skipper's Gorge near Queenstown. In many places, it's only wide enough for a single vehicle. If two vehicles meet, one often has to reverse to find a place to pass. The road clings to the edge of the canyon through narrow dirt and rock sections carved straight into the cliff. Some corners completely block the view ahead. You have to enter the turn before knowing what's waiting on the other side. What's remarkable is that much of the road still remains largely unchanged from the gold rush era more than a century ago. And when you look down into the canyon below, it's easy to understand why Skipper's Canyon Road is often considered one of New Zealand's most frightening drives, not because it's especially long, but because almost the entire journey demands your full attention every second. There are villages where, for months at a time, the only road leading in can disappear after a landslide or become blocked by snow and falling rock. Dulongjiang Highway was built to change that. The road into the Dulong Valley in Yunnan Province passes through one of the most rugged mountain regions in China. It constantly changes direction with the terrain. One moment, it's pressed against a cliff face. The next, it drops toward the valley floor. Then it follows the Dulong River before climbing back up another steep mountainside. Rock walls crowd one side of the road. The other opens toward a river flowing deep below. For many years, snowfall and landslides regularly cut off the route for months at a time. Even today, falling rock and shifting earth remain familiar hazards along the journey. The farther north you travel in Norway, the more the world seems to slowly disappear. First, the trees are gone, then the towns. Eventually, only rock, ocean, and cold wind remain. The E6 is the road that takes you to North Cape, one of the northernmost points in Europe that can be reached by car. The final hundreds of kilometers cross open tundra, where almost nothing is large enough to block the winds blowing in from the Arctic Ocean. During winter, snow doesn't simply fall onto the road. The wind keeps blowing it back across the pavement. Vehicles push through a wall of white. Visibility shrinks. The horizon disappears. Sky and ground begin to blend together. The route itself isn't particularly complex. It's mostly long, straight stretches and gentle curves that follow the terrain. Yet that very simplicity can make it surprisingly disorienting, especially when there are almost no visible landmarks left around you. Ribbon of Death is the nickname drivers have given Kishtwar-Killar Road, and it tells you almost everything you need to know. For inexperienced drivers, this road can feel like a deadly trap. For more than 100 kilometers, the route cuts through the mountains as a narrow strip carved directly into sheer cliffs. In some places, rock overhangs jut out above the roadway. Below is nothing but open space, dropping into a deep canyon. The surface is covered with loose gravel, rough, narrow, and in many sections only wide enough for a single vehicle. When two vehicles meet, the hardest part begins. Drivers have to carefully calculate every available inch of space to find a way past one another. Already intimidating on its own, the road becomes even harsher during winter when snow covers the familiar outlines of the roadway. Roads in the Chin Hills rarely feel stable. They change constantly with the seasons and the weather. The routes cross remote mountain ranges on red dirt roads repeatedly torn apart by rain and heavy trucks. After a single storm, some sections can turn into deep channels of thick mud. Tires spin helplessly. Mud flies everywhere. Cargo trucks sometimes get stuck for hours, and in some cases, several vehicles must work together just to pull one free. The mountainous terrain forces the roads to climb steep slopes and descend into deep valleys again and again. Every trip takes much longer than the map would suggest, yet people still travel these roads every day. For many villages scattered across the Chin Hills, they are the only link for transporting food, fuel, building materials, and even sick patients to larger towns. And that's exactly why these muddy dirt roads remain such an essential part of life here. It's only about 6 kilometers long, yet Trollstigen packs 11 consecutive hairpin. Turns into the mountainside of western Norway. Each one bends close to 180 degrees. The average grade sits between 9 and 10%, and that's when the drive starts getting stressful. Going uphill, it feels as if the vehicle is being pulled straight up the mountain. Going down, your foot barely leaves the brake pedal. One turn ends and another immediately appears. Left, then right, then left again. Constantly, relentlessly. The road isn't particularly wide either. Meanwhile, large tour buses travel through here every day. And for many drivers, the moment a bus suddenly appears around the next bend becomes the most memorable part of the trip. Not in a good way. Some drivers say that the first time they drove Trollsteigen, their hearts were racing and their palms were sweating, even though the temperature outside was only around 10 degrees Celsius. Because here, you never really get a chance to relax. The road is almost always demanding the next steering correction. Driving 16 kilometers doesn't sound difficult, until those 16 kilometers happen to be Fairy Meadows Road. The route leading toward the base of Nanga Parbat is little more than a rocky track carved into a mountainside thousands of meters above sea level. The surface is rough, uneven, covered in loose rock. In many places, it clings directly to the edge of the mountain, with no guardrails at all. In quite a few sections, the road is only wide enough for a single vehicle. If another vehicle approaches from the opposite direction, one of the drivers usually has to stop or back up to a wider spot. Not exactly something most people enjoy doing when a steep mountainside drops into the valley just a few feet away. The vehicle constantly shakes over the rocky surface. Outside the window, the mountains fall sharply into the valley below. Some turns force drivers to slow, almost to walking speed, not because of traffic laws, because the terrain won't allow anything faster. And unlike many other roads, Fairy Meadows Road doesn't exist year-round. Every winter, snow and ice nearly erase it from the map. Only when summer returns can vehicles begin using it again. If you counted how many times you had to turn the steering wheel from the bottom of the mountain to the top, many drivers would probably give up before reaching the end. That's one reason why the 99 Bends Road on Tianmen Mountain has become one of China's most famous roads. The route is less than 11 kilometers long, yet it climbs more than 1,000 meters through 99 consecutive turns. One ends and the next immediately begins. Left, then right, right, then left, over and over again. From a distance, the entire road looks like a white ribbon wrapped around the mountainside. Layer upon layer of curves stacked between cliffs and clouds. The higher you climb, the farther away the valley below begins to feel. The number 99 isn't random. In Chinese culture, it is associated with heaven and longevity. But for drivers, it carries a much more practical meaning. 99 steering inputs before finally reaching Heaven's Gate. Leh-Manali Highway isn't the kind of road where you simply get in the car and drive straight to your destination. In many sections, it feels more like crossing a world completely separated from the rest of India. Stretching nearly 430 kilometers, it connects Manali and Leh through a journey across multiple mountain passes in the Himalayas. The scenery changes constantly, from 1 kilometer to the next. The higher you climb, the harsher the road becomes. Suddenly, the pavement disappears and gives way to sharp rocks waiting to tear into tires. Then come muddy sections determined to drag at your wheels. The terrain is challenging enough on its own. But once the journey takes you over passes higher than 4,500 meters, the thinning air can bring headaches, dizziness, and exhaustion. There are stretches of Dalton Highway where more than 100 kilometers pass without a single town in sight. Just a road cutting through the vast wilderness of Alaska. At more than 660 kilometers long, Dalton Highway was built to support the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. Most of the journey crosses regions with almost no permanent population. Service stations are few and far between, and if something goes wrong, the nearest help may be dozens or even hundreds of kilometers away. The surface isn't always paved either. Many sections are still gravel and crushed stone. Summer brings dust. One passing truck is enough to make the road ahead disappear behind a thick cloud of dirt. Winter brings snow. Powerful winds blast sheets of white across the windshield, constantly blurring visibility in the frozen landscape. What makes Dalton Highway so stressful for many drivers is the feeling that Alaska's cold wilderness is slowly swallowing everything into silence. While the world around you becomes more distant and empty with every passing kilometer. Few roads have paid a higher price to exist than the Karakoram Highway. This route connecting Pakistan and China took nearly 2 decades to complete. Hundreds of workers and engineers lost their lives during construction among some of the most rugged mountains on Earth. Today, the journey still passes through deep gorges, massive rock faces, and valleys carved by ancient glaciers. The road constantly changes direction as it follows the folds of the Karakoram Mountains. One curve ends, and another wall of rock appears directly ahead. In some places, the roadway runs beside fast-moving muddy rivers far below. In others, it is squeezed tightly against jagged mountain sides, and the farther you travel, the more it feels like you're not driving through mountains at all. You're driving between enormous walls of stone. The vehicle feels small. The road feels small. Only the mountains remain, towering in every direction. That may be what makes the Karakoram Highway feel like a nightmare for so many drivers. Before newer roads were built, this was the route people in Bolivia had to take to travel between the capital city of La Paz and the tropical Yungas region. For years, it became a source of dread for countless drivers. North Yungas Road follows the slopes of the Andes along a narrow dirt road stretching roughly 60 kilometers. The journey begins at more than 4,500 meters above sea level before descending into the tropical valleys below. Fog, cliffs, and waterfalls regularly appear along the route. In some places, water flows across the road before plunging into the drop below. For decades, trucks, buses, and passenger vehicles all shared this same route. Passing another vehicle on steep mountain sections became a routine challenge for local drivers. Before an alternative highway opened in the early 2000s, the road was associated with hundreds of accidents every year. That's why it earned a name that leaves little room for interpretation: Death Road. If you want to reach Bontoc, you first have to get through Halsema Highway. The road cuts across the Cordillera Mountains, through more than 150 kilometers of mountain passes often covered in clouds. On some days, fog drops so low that the mountains ahead disappear completely from view. But what made Halsema Highway notorious isn't just the road itself, it's the mountains surrounding it. Landslides frequently follow periods of heavy rain. Many sections require constant repair because of falling rock and shifting earth. Even so, it remains the most important transportation route in the northern highlands of the Philippines. A road people cannot avoid, even when the mountains beside it never seem to stay completely still. A military road through the mountains built in the 1970s, crossing the Fagarash Mountains. In front of you are nearly 90 kilometers of mountain pass at an altitude of over 2,000 meters, where every turn can be a challenge. This route has dozens of hairpin turns and switchbacks one after another, so many you can't count them. Your palms are soaked with sweat from holding the steering wheel tightly, constantly shifting gears and braking on the winding, twisting sections that look like a giant intestine. Many sections have almost no guardrails, making every meter you drive both thrilling and terrifying. If you just glance to the side, you'll see the steep drop waiting below. On the road, you might see wild brown bears standing on the roadside, asking for food from passing cars. And also flocks of sheep herded by shepherds, blocking the entire road and leaving you no room to pass or swerve. Combe-Laval Road is the rocky balcony of the Vercors region in France, carved straight into the cliffside in the 19th century. It opens up to a majestic view of the Royanne Valley. Over 4 kilometers long, this stone monster has a feature that terrifies even the bravest drivers: sharp hairpin turns and dizzying switchbacks. Here, you can see straight down into the abyss, and the guardrails are very low. The screeching sound of tires on the rough road surface and the feeling of taking a turn will make your brain scream about a free fall. Many sections are steep and so narrow that two cars have a hard time passing each other. The risk of rockfall is always present, as there is almost no place to pull over. Your view will constantly change from the bright landscape outside to the darkness of a tunnel. The road is usually open year-round, but bad weather can cause it to close at any time and make the journey extremely dangerous. When mentioned Hawaii, you think of beaches and beautiful sunset. But in the northwest of Maui, something completely different is waiting for you. Hidden in the shadow of the famous road to Hana, the Kahekili Highway is a 21-mile, one-lane road that makes you feel like you're driving on the line between life and death. On the left is a steep cliff, and on the right is an edge that drops straight into the Pacific Ocean. The sound of tires screeching as you take tight winding turns at less than 15 miles per hour mixes with the sound of the car's body shaking every time the sea wind hits its side. One lane appear constantly, forcing you to yield to oncoming traffic right on the edge of the cliff. Just a moment of lost concentration can lead to serious consequences. Because of this danger, not many people dare to explore this road. In the middle of the picturesque scenery, the feeling of meeting an oncoming car on the narrow cliff edge sends your adrenaline soaring. Hold the steering wheel tight and look up to count. 1, 2, 3, 18 winding turns stacked like the letter Z on a steep cliff, all in just 450 meters. Welcome to Lingpaishi Road, one of the craziest roads and a tough test for both your nerves and driving skills. Each hairpin turn has turning points that are only 20 to 30 meters apart, which is breathtakingly short. The first 6 turns, with angles up to 70 degrees, will make your hair stand on end. Your fear instinct kicks in, and it feels like the whole world is spinning, with the car suspended between the cold cliff walls. To get through it, you need precise throttle control, steering that is accurate to the centimeter, and absolute focus. The reward for your courage will be the spectacular view from the top. The difficult terrain makes this place a driver's nightmare. But behind its scary appearance is an incredible story. Local people spent 18 long years carving the rock to open a road to connect with schools, hospitals, and the outside world. Some roads aren't made for travel, but for challenges. The Himalayan roads in Nepal are exactly that. Sitting in a bouncing jeep, you don't feel excitement, but a bone-chilling fear. This road, which looks like a clumsy, thin line clinging to the side of a steep, sharp rock mountain, is ready to take down anyone who dares. There are no barriers between you and the rushing stream below. Only the crumbling edge of the earth slowly giving way to gravity. The vehicle shakes violently as its wheels grind over the rough, rocky surface. The engine roars like a desperate attempt to hold onto a road so narrow it's just wide enough for one vehicle. Your heart feels like it stops, and the blood in your veins runs cold every time the car takes a sharp turn, with half the vehicle hanging over the edge. Amidst this overwhelming fear, you are still stunned by the wild, majestic beauty of the Himalayas. The feeling of conquering this road, standing between the vast earth and sky, is truly a priceless experience. You are standing at the entrance to Taroko Gorge in Taiwan, where 450 people died to build this road. And when you drive through here, you will understand why it's considered one of the scariest roads in the world. Your heart races, hands gripping the steering wheel tightly as the vehicle passes marble cliffs, jutting out like they are ready to swallow everything in their path. Your eyes stay locked on the road ahead, because even a moment's distraction could send the car crashing into the guardrail and plunging into the river below. Do you feel the car shaking violently? It's not an illusion, but an earthquake in this unstable geological area. On April 3, 2024, an earthquake over 7.0 magnitude caused rocks and dirt to collapse, burying the road in just a few dozen seconds. If you were a moment slower, you could have been trapped under thousands of tons of rock. The road is constantly destroyed by nature, then repaired and reopened because it is the only route connecting the two coasts of Taiwan through the center of the island. You enter the Canning Stock Route, an off-road track over 1,100 miles long, crossing 3 deserts in Western Australia. Don't look for asphalt, because beneath you is only scorching red sand and over 1,000 towering sand dunes ready to swallow up weak vehicles. The air is as hot as an oven, filling your lungs, dry and full of dust. You will face a suffocating solitude. The only living things you might see are wild camels or reptiles. If your vehicle breaks down among these vast dunes, you officially become a desert ghost, because the nearest gas station might be 1,000 kilometers away. The threat comes not only from the temperature, but also from the terrain. The corrugated sections of the road will shake your vehicle with terrifying frequency, loosening every nut and bolt and destroying. Your only water source is old wells from the last century, many of which are dry or contaminated, forcing you to conserve every precious drop. They call this place the Widowmaker. In just 4 years, it recorded 44 serious accidents. This is Cat and Fiddle Road, a roughly 7.5-mile road crossing the wild moorlands of Peak District National Park at an altitude of about 1,690 feet. Hidden behind its breathtaking beauty is a series of deadly hazards, a succession of sharp turns, constantly changing elevations, and stone walls on both sides with no escape shoulder. The moorland fog can wipe out your visibility in seconds, while strong winds are powerful enough to make cars swerve. In winter, the slippery road surface further increases the risk of accidents. Motorcycles make up only 2% of the traffic, but account for 75% of the victims, as it has long been an unofficial racetrack. Motorcycles fly out of blind corners into oncoming traffic at 100 miles per hour. This is why it's one of the UK's traffic black spots. If you've ever been on the Cat and Fiddle, share what you were driving and in what season. Do you think it deserves to be one of the most dangerous roads in the UK? Do you have the courage to conquer one of the loneliest and harshest roads in the world, where the raw beauty of the Arctic meets a grueling challenge? This is the Dalton Highway, about 400 miles long, crossing the Yukon River and remote forests. Ahead of you is an Alaskan nightmare, where the bone-chilling cold envelops you. The snow-laden wind howls, leaving you alone in the wilderness with whiteout visibility. The vehicle bounces on a road full of rocks and mud mixed with chemicals as slick as grease. Ready to throw you into a deep ravine in a moment of carelessness. You look in your rearview mirror and see no one. You look at your phone, and the signal bars disappeared hundreds of miles ago. You are completely alone in this 240-mile-long ice trap, where temperatures can plummet to minus 76 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to freeze the oil in your car. There are no gas stations or other basic services. If your car dies, death will find you before any rescue team can receive a distress signal from this void. Your GPS thinks driving on this road is a good idea. Maybe it's time to buy a new one. For almost a century, only wooden planks groaning in the strong wind separated life from the abyss here. It took villagers over 15 years to carve this road by hand to create a path to the outside world. Wuxi Cliff Road is a thin 1.2-kilometer strip of concrete hanging on a cliff in southwest China. You drive with a steep cliff on one side and a nearly 3,000-foot drop on the other. Just looking down is enough to make your palms turn cold. The road is narrow, has a steep grade of up to 22.9%, and has 18 hairpin turns so tight you can't make them in one go, requiring absolute caution. In some parts, the cliff juts out close to the front of your car, forcing car to crawl forward meter by meter. When it rains, fog covers the road, turning an already dangerous journey into a real mental challenge. However, the trip offers a stunning view of the Lanying Grand Canyon, the deepest canyon in Chongqing. Returning to India, the next destination on the list is the hauntingly named Kishtwar-Killar Road. This road, about 70 miles long, reaches a maximum elevation of 8,200 feet and has absolutely no guardrails on either side, forcing you to not let your guard down for even a second. What's incredible is that this road still exists. Despite being extremely dangerous, it's only open in the summer, is completely unpaved, forcing you to move slowly over potholes and large rocks that have been there for years. There's a particularly dangerous 6-mile stretch with an overhanging cliff that looks like it could collapse at any moment. Built hundreds of years ago by local people and barely maintained, the Killar-Tibet Road is just wide enough for a single jeep to pass. One small mistake could send the vehicle plunging straight down a cliff thousands of feet deep. Imagine you're standing in front of a cliff that's almost 90 degrees steep, so high that clouds float by at eye level. And on that giant wall, more than 2,000 villagers carved a narrow path with their own hands, just wide enough for a small car to squeeze through. That's Shabanhi Cliff Road in Guizhou Province, China. The road connects two remote residential areas. The 470-meter-long road is almost as long as 5 football fields, but is only 4.5 meters wide. Large trucks? Absolutely impossible. Even a pickup truck requires a driver with nerves of steel. Driving on it, you will feel how fragile it is, so much so that it's hard to believe it's real. But it's solid enough that you can't deny its existence. No room to make a mistake. Fear lingers each time you peer through the railings into the unfathomable below. Standing at the entrance, your survival instinct just wants to scream, turn back. But if you're brave enough to go on, you'll experience one of the scariest cliff-hanging roads in the world. Entering Irohazaka is like stepping into an insane loop. You have to face 48 180-degree turns in a short distance, with 20 going up and 28 coming down, each marked with a character from the ancient Iroha poem. Imagine the pressure on your brake system, with an average grade of up to 15 to 20%. Your brake pads will heat up to over 570 degrees Fahrenheit after just 10 minutes of descent. If you don't know engine braking techniques, the brake fluid can boil, and you'll lose control right at the 20th turn. In the narrowest sections, the road is only about 11.5 feet wide, while your car takes up nearly 6.5 feet, leaving only a few centimeters for error. Once a path for ancient monks, Irohazaka is now a famous challenge route associated with initial D and a legend in Japanese car culture. You are standing in one of the most tense border regions in the world. Zuluk Zigzag Road, or Pulbulaya, is located on the ancient Silk Road, just a few kilometers from the Chinese border. What's remarkable is that much of the road still remains largely unchanged from the Gold Rush era more than a century ago. And when you look down into the canyon below, it's easy to understand why Skipper's Canyon Road is often considered one of New Zealand's most frightening drives, not because it's especially long, but because almost the entire journey. There are villages where, for months at a time, the only road leading in can disappear after a landslide or become blocked by snow and falling rock. Dulongjiang Highway was built to change that. The road into the Dulong Valley in Yunnan Province passes through one of the most rugged mountain regions in China. If you think you've tasted harshness, try driving on the Pamir Highway in Afghanistan. Imagine you're behind the wheel at an altitude of 15,272 feet on the Akbaytal Pass. The air is so thin that oxygen levels are about half, making you dizzy from altitude sickness, yet you must maintain absolute focus. Beneath your wheels is a dirt and rock surface ravaged by landslides. On one side is a sheer cliff. On the other, a deep, rocky abyss with no guardrails for protection. Our heart pounds. Your hands grip the steering wheel as the car enters hairpin turns with blind corners. Just a small miscalculation in steering could lead to losing control and plunging into the deep abyss below. And it doesn't stop there. The risk of rockfalls is ever present along the journey, making every foot of travel a tense and risky challenge. The Hana Highway, also known as the Road to Hana, is about 64.4 miles long, connecting Kahului to the town of Hana on the eastern side of Maui, Hawaii. Although the distance as the crow flies is only about 52 miles, the drive takes 2.5 to 4 hours due to the extremely winding, narrow terrain with 620 curves and 59 narrow bridges. There are no streetlights on the way to Hana. Therefore, the chance of an accident increases significantly, especially if you drive in the early morning or late at night. When the road is empty, it's easy to fall into a trap and drive faster, leading to a loss of speed control. Additionally, this area has a risk of flash floods when hiking or stopping to explore waterfalls and streams. Water can rise quickly and unexpectedly, leaving you stranded and unable to return to the main road. You might think you're in paradise when you set foot on the road to Hana, but this is a route that demands absolute caution. In southwestern Uganda, there's a road where the ground beneath it won't stay still. The 88.5-kilometer Kabale-Kizoro Road passes through the Kigezi Hills, the Switzerland of Africa, climbing from about 1,200 meters to nearly 2,700 meters before dropping steeply towards the Congo border. On one side is a hillside, and on the other is a slope with no guardrails. On May 4th, 2023, a crack appeared in the village of Bwara, and in a short time, an entire section of the road slid down the hillside with mud, completely paralyzing traffic. But landslides are not the only danger. Kanaba Corner is the most notorious turn on this route, located right after a long downhill stretch, long enough for trucks and buses to lose their brakes. Even so, many tourists are willing to pay around $800 to travel on this road, just to see the last remaining mountain gorillas on Earth. The roads in the Far East are always a challenge for drivers. The Kolyma Highway in Siberia, Russia, is known as the coldest road in the world, stretching 1,262 miles. It's also called the Road of Bones, due to its tragic history of being built by hundreds of thousands of prisoners in the past. Here, the cold from the ice feels like the breath of death. The temperature can drop to a record minus 94 degrees Fahrenheit. Your tires become brittle and can pop if they hit a rock. You break out in a sweat. Because if the car's engine dies for just 10 minutes, you will freeze to death instantly. Your heart is pounding as you drive through snow-covered roads. The path is so blurry that you can only see about 2 meters ahead. The car keeps moving through the eerie silence of the taiga forest, and you have no idea what is waiting up ahead. The BR 116 Highway, also known as the Highway of Death, is over 2,725 miles long, connecting Fortaleza to Jaguarão. And is considered one of Brazil's most dangerous roads due to harsh conditions, heavy traffic, and a high accident rate. Many sections of the road are deteriorated with potholes, uneven surfaces, and a lack of signs, making driving dangerous, especially in bad weather. The heavy volume of trucks and buses also increases the risk of collisions on narrow, winding sections. The road takes you through various terrains, from plains to mountainous areas, with sharp turns, steep inclines, and where fog and strong winds can appear suddenly, severely reducing visibility. Robberies and cargo thefts targeting trucks also make the journey on BR 116 always fraught with a sense of insecurity and danger. You're driving a vehicle across an ash plain at an altitude of over 14,700 feet. Ahead is the Cotopaxi volcano, a giant that is still actively simmering in Ecuador, where even a small tremor can trigger volcanic mudflows or lahars. To rush down the mountainside. The wheels grind on the eroded, gravelly road, flanked by steep slopes that drop into deep abysses. The wind howls outside, while the car shakes violently over every pothole, the tires occasionally slipping on the wet gravel as you take a turn. At an altitude of nearly 15,000 feet, the thin air makes the engine roar louder than usual, and you start to feel a headache and shortness of breath as the oxygen level decreases with every foot of elevation. But the most dangerous thing is that you're driving on the flank of one of the world's most dangerous active volcanoes, where a single eruption could turn the entire road into a deadly mud flow in just a few minutes. The Dutch once called this headland de Vuile Hoek, the foul point, because so many ships ran aground and sank among the sharp coral reefs and violent seas. To this day, the coastal road here remains just as dangerous. The North Coast Road runs along the northern coast of Mauritius, winding between the Blue Sea and Rocky Mountains, with a narrow surface and many sections without guardrails. Sharp, blind corners make it difficult to guess if an oncoming car is approaching, especially at night when lighting and signs are very limited. Strong sea winds and a rough road surface make controlling the vehicle more difficult, especially in heavy rain or bad weather. Just a small mistake could cause the car to crash into the cliff or plunge into the sea. With a traffic accident rate much higher than other areas, especially for pedestrians, this coastal road on the island always demands absolute concentration. The Luxor-Hurghada Road, about 188 miles long, connects Luxor on the Nile River with Hurghada on the Red Sea. And it's one of those roads that makes you cautious, for one unique reason. Turning off your headlights in the dark of night is a choice for survival. You're speeding on a flat strip of asphalt through the vast desert, but don't let its peaceful appearance fool you. You have to grip the steering wheel, straining your eyes into the pitch-black void, because drivers believe that turning on their lights will blind them and make them more likely to crash into each other. You're playing Russian roulette with your life, where giant iron masses weighing tens of tons hurtle towards you at terrifying speeds. Combined with the sand kicked up by the desert wind, you might not see any obstacles until they are right in front of you and it's too late to brake. But driving with your lights on is even more dangerous. Bandits hide in the darkness, and your lights are what point them to you. If a stranger waves you down for help, keep driving. Don't try to be a hero on this road. After a road clinging to a cliff in New Zealand and another twisting through the stormy Atlantic in Norway, our journey now takes a turn to a very different place. A place where the road doesn't just face the elements, but cuts straight through thousands of years of history. This is the Khyber Pass in Pakistan. This roughly 33-mile, 53-kilometers mountain pass is located in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. Connecting Jamrud near Peshawar to the Torkham border crossing with Afghanistan. If the Atlantic Ocean Road is a daring bridge across the sea, the Khyber Pass is like an ancient doorway left by nature between colossal walls of stone. The route cuts through the Spin Gar, also known as the White Mountains. The mountains here are barren and sheer, looking like colossal fortress walls built by nature long before mankind ever thought of paving a road. And right between those walls lies a narrow gorge, a small passageway. Yet significant enough to alter the history of the entire region. For centuries, caravans of merchants, travelers, and conquering armies have marched through this very spot. If the cliffs of the Khyber Pass could talk, they would be incredibly busy historians, because the sheer volume of stories they hold could fill a library. The pass reaches an elevation of about 3,500 feet, 1,070 meters, at Landi Kotal. That number might sound modest compared to other famous mountain passes, but the terrain here presents its own unique brand of challenge. The tight hairpin turns and sections, weaving through the mountain slopes, make driving feel like trying to thread a needle through a massive rocky corridor built by nature. That's just a bit too snug. As your vehicle pushes deeper into the pass, the feeling is distinct. Unlike modern highways built to conquer nature, the Khyber Pass makes you feel as though you are driving through an ancient gateway to Asia, where every bend not only leads you to the other side of the mountain, but also takes you through countless layers of history. Leaving behind the ancient gorge of the Khyber Pass, where history still seems to whisper among the cliffs, our journey continues even higher. This time, not among the arid mountains of Asia, but amidst the towering peaks of the French Alps. There lies a road that leaves many first-time viewers asking one very honest question. Who on earth thought of building a road way up there? That is the Col de la Bonnette. This mountain pass sits between the Alpes Maritimes and Alpes de Haute-Provence regions. near the Italian border. The route connects the Ubai Valley to the Tine Valley, steadily climbing to an altitude of 8,907 feet. Before reaching the famous loop around the Cime de la Bonnette, where the asphalt touches 9,192 feet, making it the highest paved road in France. From a distance, the road looks like a thin grey ribbon carelessly dropped onto the mountainside. But as you climb higher, the scenery begins to change in a rather peculiar way. Vegetation gradually vanishes, and the lush green gives way to silvery grey boulders. No more forests, no more villages, just wind, rocks, and curves hugging the mountain. Many say this place looks more like the surface of the moon than a road on Earth. If NASA were looking for a place to practice driving on Mars, they might want to consider the Col de la Bonnette. It is exactly this harsh terrain that has made the pass one of the most legendary hill climbs in the Tour de France. For cyclists, it is practically a test of willpower. A long, grueling incline, thin air, and a cold wind blowing straight into your face. The kind of terrain that makes your legs start asking, do we really need to go up this high? Scattered along the road are military ruins from the Maginot Line, sitting quietly amidst the rocks and wind like retired sentinels from a bygone era. And as your car navigates the final few corners, the sensation becomes quite surreal. The road no longer seems to cling to the mountain, but rather feels like it's floating between earth and sky. A delicate stroke drawn through the clouds, where just looking down is enough to remind yourself. Keeping a firm grip on the steering wheel is probably a very wise idea. Some roads make you slow down. Others turn every kilometer into a challenge. And then there are places where simply looking at the road is enough to make many people want to turn around. What about you? Out of all the places we've seen today, which road do you think is the most terrifying? Would you be willing to drive it yourself? Let us know in the comments. And if you'd like to keep exploring some of the harshest and most dangerous places on Earth, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We'll see you on the next journey.